Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of The Fool Rides Again, the podcast where I, Jinx, your host and imaginary friend, answers the burning question of what happens when you release a rider into the wild and he gets the chance to explore the world. So if you've ever been interested in topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, or even character motivation, then this is the podcast for you, so please stay tuned. With that being said, on this week's episode, I'm going to answer the question, what happens when you release a rider into the wild and he gets the chance to explore the world of hostels? What better way to do that than start off with a couple of scenarios. First one being this. Imagine you're an individual who decided to book a trip to another country, and you don't really have a lot to spend, so you booked as cheap as you can get, and that meant you are staying in a hostel. You are not in a 5-star hotel, are stuck in a bunk room with a whole bunch of other people, and these are all individuals you do not know. You get there and you see 8 bunk beds, and all of them are booked and taken, so you snag the very last one available, which just happens to be the top bunk nearest the window. And you go there, and you don't know anyone else here, so you see a couple lockers, and you decide to store all your stuff in the locker because you do not trust anyone. You go out to spend time in the city that you're staying in. You come back, and you discover your locker has been broken into. What happens next? If that's not quite the scenario for you, how about this one instead? You decide you're going to go to an international trip and you're going to join a tour. But you don't want to miss your tour. You decide to go a couple days early and you get to the place, you get to your hostel, and it happens to be the exact same hostel that your tour group will be staying in a couple of days. You get there, you book your room, you stay the night, and you wake up the next day, go downstairs, and discover you have to change rooms. You're going to end up with a roommate, and the room you're in right now is currently only available for one person. So the staff tells you you have 2 options. You can either leave all your stuff in the room and the staff will move it to a new location when checkout is, or you can move all your stuff now and have it waiting in the lobby until you can check into the next place. What happens next? If that's not quite the scenario for you, how about this one instead? Imagine you've been part of a tour group for a long time now, and you've been going across the country, staying in different hostels in a whole bunch of different cities. And you get to the point where your guide tells you that your roommates are going to be the exact same roommates you've had for the last several days. And you think to yourself, I don't like that. I want to stay with someone different. And you, your roommate, and a couple other people decide to make plans, and you're going to switch roommates. And you're all good. And your guide tells you again, he doesn't care if you change rooms because that's your prerogative. Just do it among yourselves. You get to the new hostel, you pull up there, you get out. Your guide goes up to the counter and he starts gathering the keys and checking everyone in. And you're happy with your plan because you like your new roommate. You've been good friends along the trip and it's going to be good. But as the guide starts calling out the names and assigning rooms, you realize your guide isn't following his own instructions. Every single person that he's calling out has a different roommate, and they're all staying in different rooms, and no one on the group is happy about it because everyone was told repeatedly, you are going to have the exact same roommates that you've had the entire trip. And suddenly, they're breaking their own rules and giving out different room assignments, and people start getting loud, and people are getting vocal, and chaos starts to erupt in the lobby of the new hostel. What happens next? And if that scenario is not quite for you, how about this fourth one instead? Imagine you've arrived to a new city and you've been given a room in a hostel and you have a roommate, but your roommate never shows up to your room and you are basically in there by yourself. And you're thinking to yourself, this is awesome. I don't really know the roommate, so I like having the room to myself. I can watch movies all night long, I can be talkative, I can have the lights on and not have to worry about disturbing someone else because they're not there. And it gets super late at night and you decide you really are going to sleep. And you curl up in your bed, turn off the lights, and as you're laying there trying to sleep, a shadow passes over you. It's quick, so you don't really register what it is, but it freaks you out a little bit. And you start to look around, investigate the room, and there's nothing there. But as you're going back to bed, the shadow crosses over you again. And then the shadow crosses over you a third time, and you start getting creeped out. What is this shadow, and why does it keep crossing over me as I'm trying to go to sleep? This time you get up and you're not really tired. You are determined to stay up until the shadow crosses again just to see what it is. And this time when the shadow does appear again, you're ready and you see it. And what you see disturbs you because right outside the window, next to your bed, is the silhouette of a person. And this time, the silhouette doesn't move. They are just there. And you feel the eyes of whoever it is watching you. What happens next? Now, my friend, that should be enough of the scenario. I know I went through them pretty quickly, but a scenario doesn't have to take that long. But now I can get to the point of the stories behind them. So as I discussed in the last episode, I recently went to Costa Rica, and while I was there, I stayed in a few hostels. Now, I should also point out, I've stayed in a lot of hostels besides these 3. And I've been in hostels across the world now. I've stayed in a lot in Peru. I've stayed in them in Costa Rica. I've stayed in them in the States. I've stayed in them several places. So I'm getting better at judging them. But when I was in Costa Rica, all 3 of my hostels were different from each other. The very first one I stayed in, I got there, and yes, I got there a day early because I always do before I join a group tour. I don't want to miss the group tour. I don't want to show up late, anything like that. So I get there a day early just to verify I will be there on time. And when I got there, they gave me my keys. It's a nice little place. Not very large, probably 30 or so rooms over 2 stories. And I get there and go to my room, and there's only one bed. Small bathroom, a fridge, and I think to myself, this is awesome. I have my own room. And pretty tired, so I pass out in that one room. And the next day I go down, I'm like, I'm going to explore the city, see what's going on, because I didn't get a chance to. But as I'm going down there, the receptionist calls me over and tells me that I'm going to end up with a roommate and I have to change rooms. Okay, that's fine. I kind of expected a roommate going there, but I really didn't want one, and I didn't want to change rooms. And they gave me the 2 options I mentioned in the scenario. The first option being, I can leave all my stuff in my room, and the staff will move my stuff out of the room when checkout arrives at 11 a.m. The other option is I move all my stuff out of the room and put it downstairs in the lobby and leave it there until I can check into the next room at 3 p.m. Neither situation is ideal, and I really didn't want to do either. I didn't want to leave my stuff in the lobby while I'm around town for a couple hours. But I also really didn't want the staff to move my stuff for me. So what did I do? I went outside, went across the street, got coffee, came back, and I packed up my own stuff. I'd rather pack it up than have the staff do it, because at least I know I'm getting everything in there and it's going in the right spot. Brought it downstairs, checked out my room, gave them the key, and I put my stuff in the little hallway next to the stairs in the lobby and left it there for several hours. I was lucky because I was one of the first people to check out of the room, and I was able to get it pretty far back in the hallway. After a half hour or so, a whole lot of other people came and did the exact same thing, and my stuff just got buried back there. Convenient for me. Those who were last, their stuff was more easily accessible, and it sucked. Though no one's stuff was tampered with at all, everything was fine right there. It's still the concept of leaving your stuff unsecured while you're traveling. No one wants their stuff taken. It makes you nervous anyway. And after I came back from that, I was able to check into my room. The new room had 2 bunk beds, so 4 people can sleep in there, and I only had 1 roommate. So we went in there, we each chose our bottom bunks, and pretty much passed out. Woke up the next day, and we were on our way to another hostel that night. The second hostel kind of inspired some of the stories too. The second one was pretty nice. I got there super late, and this is the type of room you expect the hostel to be. It's a whole bunch of people staying in one room together. There were 3 bunk beds in my room, so 6 people can stay in there. There were 6 lockers, so each person can store their valuables in there if they really wanted to. People were coming and going as they went. I got there last, so I ended up with one of the top bunks. Whatever, it's fine. I didn't feel the need to store my stuff in the locker because everyone in that hostel and that room with me was on my group tour, and we were rooming together for quite a while, and we'd be following each other around the country. Wasn't really too nervous. I also didn't have anything of value in my bags because I don't travel with anything of value. And if I do, it's my phone and wallet, which stays on me, so nothing's left in the room. That room itself was pretty nice. It's what you expect a hostel to be again. Nice bathroom, nice shower, lots of bunks, lockers, things like that. The hostel itself was also nice because there was a nice outdoor area, bar, place people can play games, hot tub, things like that. Lots of trees, so it was pretty looking. There was a gate at the front, so anyone who was not staying at the hostel couldn't get in. You had to actually prove that you were a guest of the hostel to be able to get into the place. So there was an extra layer of security there, and it's pretty nice. Stayed there for a couple days before we left. Now, the third hostel, on the way there, me and a couple other people, we became really good friends. And we decided we'd rather room together than who we were rooming with. And we decided to switch roommates. We were told by our guide that who our roommate was on the very first night was going to be who our roommate was again. So we're like, okay, those two are friends and we're friends, so we can just trade and become roommates and be happy and stay together. And a couple other people made plans like that and decided these are who's going to room together. There wasn't any fighting, anything like that. And we got to the new place and our guide checked us in and he really did start calling out the names, and none of the people he called out were the previous roommates. He had changed the rooming assignment for every single person in the group. And it made a lot of people unhappy because we were promised repeatedly that we were going to have the exact same roommates that we had the first couple nights, and it's not. It's a complete lie. So chaos erupted in the lobby while we all tried to figure this out. No one ended up rooming with who they were assigned. Every single person in the group changed roommates. I roomed with the friend I made. Others got their own rooms. Others roomed with the people they came with. It was sorted out. It just took a while. This hostel itself was pretty nice, though. There was a lot of common areas, and each of the common areas there were a lot of like sofas. It was outdoors. There were hammocks that you could chill in. There were board games. There were books to read. A couple of different floors. It was nice. And people were coming in and out at all hours. Me, I never got back to my room until close to midnight, 1 a.m. every single time, and I woke up super early, and I would go chill at the hammock every day because I liked laying in the hammock and watching the sunrise over the beach. It was majestic. But this hostel itself came with different issues. Besides the first night, we were all coming in and out at different hours, and like I said, I wasn't getting back to my room until midnight or 1 a.m. And the reason for that is because my group of 4 that decided we were going to start hanging out, we would go up to the top floor and just play cards all night long. Well, one night we got super loud, and one of the other guests up there came out and yelled at us and told us to go back to our rooms because it is midnight. They have to sleep and wake up early. We felt a little bad, so we disbanded and went back to our rooms. And here I did get lucky. My roommate, who I decided to stay with, ended up making friends with someone else, and he ended up staying in someone else's room all those nights. So I had the room to myself, which was nice because I could have the light on whenever I wanted to. I could turn the light off. I could play my music. My room was not close to anyone else's room. I could watch videos, anything like that, shower, use all that stuff whenever I wanted because I didn't have a roommate. Though that very first morning I woke up sucked. Just because I didn't have a roommate didn't mean my roommate didn't leave his stuff in the room. And he got there, and I woke up the next day to his alarm going off on his phone. Super early. I wasn't supposed to get up until like 9 a.m. and his phone went off at like 5:30. So that sucked. I tried to turn the phone off, but it was locked in a bag that I couldn't get to. I tried to message him because he had a second phone. He did not respond. So I kind of locked his bag in a different room and tried to go back to sleep. Did not work. So I went and crashed on a hammock until people started waking up. That kind of sucked. The trouble with hostels is you don't always know what everyone else is bringing. There's not always the common courtesy to turn your alarms off if you don't need an alarm on. I thought I was getting lucky by having the room to myself, but karma came to play. Now, as for the room itself, it was nice. Large beds, a couch, a fridge that I was constantly using and putting beer in, and 2 large frosted windows. Now, the frosted windows, on the other side of it was a hallway. And gradually throughout the day and night, you would see a shadow as a silhouette of a person walked by the room. And they were frosted so no one could actually look into the room, though I still closed the blinds because I didn't want anyone looking in the room. That's just kind of creepy. But as I talk about my experience, my story behind this, I'm pretty sure you're making the connections of my story and where the inspiration for my scenarios came from. For example, the shadow and the silhouette of people clearly came from that last hostel. What if it wasn't just a person walking by in the middle of the night to go to the kitchen or something like that? What if it was actually someone trying to catch a glimpse of whoever was in the room? Creepy. You never know what's going on because you're in a hotel or a hostel and there's lots of different people who stay there and they all have different ideas and thoughts in their mind of what to do and They all have different motives. You never know quite what people are thinking in that sort of scenario and what they're doing, what their intentions are. I wasn't nervous myself, but I could see why someone would be if that happened. And I decided to play with that fear a little bit with the scenario. What if someone really was sneaking by with a malicious intent or a pervy intent, and they're just watching whoever's staying in the room? My windows in that hostel were frosted, but I know for a fact that not every window there was frosted. Some were very clear and people could easily look into it. I told a couple of the other people in my group, hey, your windows are clear. You might want to close the blinds because people can watch from this other area. I made sure to let people know that that was a possibility. Don't do that. This is creepy, and just be on the lookout because we're not the only ones staying here. There are still a whole bunch of other people. The person that yelled at us, for example, they weren't part of our tour group. They were just some random other person. And we met a lot of random people there that just wanted to enjoy their vacations or whatever their vacation entailed. They wanted to enjoy it. Whether that meant they were in the rooms, staying up late, playing games, getting up early to go play in the beach, or maybe they were just trying to watch people and be creepy. I don't know. But I played with that hostel a little bit to create a scenario. The second hostel I stayed in, the one that was very much a hostel with 3 bunks, that played into the scenarios as well. What if someone was stuck in that room without knowing anyone there and they had to put their stuff in the locker? It is very much a fear of people that their stuff is going to get stolen. So there's lockers. I've stayed in lots of hostels that had lockers and things like that because people are nervous. And that's not just in Costa Rica, that's across the world. I stayed in Chicago where there were lockers and bunk rooms like that. I've stayed in them in Texas, and I've stayed in them in other places. So it's a very possible thing, and people don't want their stuff stolen. But if someone really wants to steal something, a locker and a lock is not necessarily going to stop them. There are lots of ways to get into that. And if you don't know who's there, you get nervous. And because of thoughts like that is why I keep all my valuables on me. I don't store them in the room when I'm not there. They're always with me. So there's a possibility there. As for the first hostel, the one where we had to change rooms and store our stuff in the lobby, clearly inspired one of my scenarios because that is exactly what happened. You get there early, you're told to leave your stuff in the lobby because you're forced to check out. What happens in that? I don't give an ending because there's so many different possibilities. In my actual experience, nothing happened. We were all fine. Our stuff came back to the rooms with us and we had everything we needed. But it doesn't mean that there's not possible that someone is going to get their stuff stolen from the lobby because it's not secure. There is the possibility that someone wants their stuff cleared up from the room and they don't want to do it themselves, so they let the staff do it. And the staff is responsible for packing up the bags and everything like this. There's nothing to say the staff doesn't pocket something from the room, or they forget to pack something because something rolled under the bed. Say a charger was left in the room and now you don't have your charger. What happens there? Because it's all possibilities. Though I'm getting a little too far into plotting on this, and the purpose of this episode is world building. And with that being said, let's move to that segment. As I said, the purpose of this episode is the world build, and I really just want to point out that there are so many different ways to include a hostel into your room. And there are so many different variety of hostels available. All 3 of the hostels I stayed in Costa Rica were different. Every single one was different. You had the bunkhouse, you had the one that was more of a hotel, you had the one that was beachfront, had barely any walls. So if you're going to add a hostel to your place, you can pick and choose on what you're going to add based on the properties of the world around you. When I stayed in Chicago, my hostel was a bunkhouse. But it wasn't just a bunkhouse. There was the opportunity and the option to book single rooms, so you could stay in your own place. It just cost a little bit more than staying in the bunkhouse. And in a single room, you're not likely to have lockers because there's no one else going in and out of the room. But in a bunkhouse, you're almost always guaranteed to have a locker because you need to be able to store your stuff somewhere. And then you have the other rules for it. Are you there early enough that you get a single room, then you have to transfer? Is the hostel in your world going to have an actual secure room for luggage when people aren't staying there, or is it going to have to stay in the lobby? In Costa Rica, everything had to stay in the lobby, but when I went to Peru and my hostel there, they had a locked room on the first floor that people would store their bags in when they weren't there, or as they were waiting for their room, because that's just how that hostel is built. There's opportunities because every hostel is slightly different, but there's still similarities between them. Based on your world again, what kind of place is your hostel? Is it on the beach? And is the beach always warm and sunny and constant temperatures throughout the year? So your hostel, its common areas, it doesn't need walls because it's a consistent temperature. Is that the possibility there? I don't know. In my third hostel in Montezuma, there were no walls and there were hammocks everywhere. There was only really one rule to follow. Well, two rules to follow. One I broke, one I did not. If you were coming from the beach, you had to wash your feet off because they did not want sand being tracked through the hostel. Fair. You don't want the sand there getting over everything, so wash your feet before you go in. They had a water faucet at the entrance that you could wash your feet off before going in, so you weren't bringing sand everywhere. And the second rule, which is usually a given at most hostels, is that there are quiet hours. And they're usually from like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So people can actually sleep, because people party all night long. They don't want to be disturbed in the hostel. I broke that one, and I will admit it. It was unintentional, and we felt bad, but hostels usually have some type of rule like that. So if you're going to include one, include quiet hours, because they're very common. And it allows you to play with other things too. Does your character actually care about the quiet hours, or does he break them? And what happens if he breaks them? In mine, we just had someone yell at us and we all dispersed and went back to our bed. But what if the group did not disperse? What if we continued being louder and said, we don't care that this other guest is disturbed? So what? Sleep is overrated. What would happen then? Would the guest come out again, or would the guest go get management and we would be kicked out of the hostel? None of us would want that, but if you're going to create a hostel, create some rules. And what happens if the rules are violated? When are the check-in and check-out times? Check-out is typically, 11 a.m. And check-in is typically in the afternoon, 3 p.m. for us. But is there a possibility of early check-in or late check-out? If there's not, where are people storing their stuff? Or if you're in a hostel that has bunk rooms and bunk houses, where are people storing their stuff in there? Do they have lockers? And here's the other thing. Does the hostel provide the lock for the lockers, or do the guests have to bring their own? What if a guest wants to use their locker and they don't have a lock? What's going to happen? Or what happens here if the guest who stores their stuff gets their stuff stolen? Is there liabilities on the hostel? Probably not. Are there cameras around to show what happens or who got into the locker? Again, probably not, but it's possible. You can throw that into your own world because there's so many different things and people are being grouped together. You can easily find a way to break rules or break laws and steal stuff. No one would necessarily know what's going on or who did it. Another very common thing with hostels is there's usually a gate. People can usually go in and out of the hostel at all hours of the day and night. But when it comes to night hours, they usually have to ring a bell to get let back in because the gate is closed and the doors are locked. My first hostel, the door was locked all day long. You had to ring the doorbell all day to get let back into the hostel. Which is fine. It's fair. You don't just have people walking in off the street. And the second hostel, it was similar. We had a gate. And you had to ring the bell and the employees would open up the gate for you. And the third hostel, it didn't have either of that. You just dropped off your key at reception when you left, because each room only had one key. And there was usually two people staying there, and it was a $50 replacement fee for the key if you lost it. And we went back into the room, or we left the key there, we came back, we grabbed the key, and we went to our room. No gates or anything. You can just walk in and out. Nothing stopping you. But it's very common that there is a gate. When I stayed in Peru, the very first hostel I stayed in there had a gate that closed about 10 p.m. You were supposed to be able to ring the bell and someone would let you in. That wasn't always the case. The second night there, my roommate got locked out. And he rung the bell and they didn't let him back in. So he could not stay in the hostel. He had to stay somewhere else because the gate was closed and it was past hours. Kind of sucks for him. But it's possible that's happened. So if you're building a hostel, these are more things to consider. Is there a gate? Is it constantly manned? Is there someone always available to let people in? Or is there a certain hour that people just stop working the gate, and if you're stuck outside, you're stuck outside till the next day? Again, another thing is keys. Almost every single hostel I've stayed in outside the country, I've had to leave my key at reception whenever I leave because they only have one. So what happens in your hostel? Do you leave the key at reception, or are you good to go and you can bring the key with you? I mean, there's really no rule saying you have to leave the key. It's just that fine that people don't want to pay if they lose it. So people are still bringing their keys with them and doing whatever they wanted. I haven't seen anyone lose a key yet, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. In my third hostel in Costa Rica, it's kind of creepy. Each room key was just left in a basket in reception, open to the world to just go grab. I left mine there, I didn't really care. But other people did not want to leave their keys there because they were nervous someone else would come pick them up and then get into their room without them being there, which is a very valid fear. What happens in that situation? When you're designing your hostel, how are the keys stored? Do they get left in a basket on the counter, or are they placed behind the counter and only an employee can retrieve them? And you have to verify identification before they give you the key. Who knows? That is up to you to decide, but it's things you can consider when world building. And none of this stuff has to actually be super relevant in whatever story you're writing. It's just stuff to be aware of, and it can kind of add to your story and your world because you're making it more realistic on all these other considerations. If you are doing a mystery and someone broke into someone's room to steal something, and you leave your key on the counter, there is so much more opportunity for a mystery there because anyone can retrieve it. But if you leave the key with the receptionist, it's limited on who can do it, because they're checking IDs or something to give the key back. Is there a receptionist or a staff employee that broke into the room then because they were the only ones that have access to it? Or did someone else come and pick the lock to your room because that's the only way to get into it? Possibilities are endless with the simple idea of how the keys are stored when you leave a hostel. And that's just world building. It adds to your plot, it adds to everything else and that, but it's just world building itself on where is a key placed. Again, if you have a gate, who does a gate keep out? Does it keep out every single person because it's locked all day long? Or does it only keep out those at night? And so someone came in during the middle of the day and they just kind of stayed there all night long. Or is your main character completely locked out of their room and they have to find a place to sleep in the middle of the night because the gate doesn't open after 10 p.m. Again, world building, but it can advance your plot in so many different directions. I don't know how many hostels I'm going to include in my worlds and all that stuff, but I do know if I do include a hostel, there are so many different things I'm going to start including with it because it makes the place more realistic. And there are so many ways to implement it because it will carry my story a little bit and give reason to it. As I said earlier, you don't have to straight up mention every single detail about the hostel. You don't have to go in and say, my character is staying in this hostel and these are the rules that they have to follow and abide by, and check-in's this time, check-out time is this. Anything like that. Because I can just picture, my main character checked into the hostel after bypassing the front gate at 3 p.m. He dropped his stuff off in the room. He grabbed the lock from the front desk and he came upstairs, went in there, chose a locker and locked his stuff up and left, leaving his key at the front desk when he walked out of the hostel. That's not needed. You don't need to explicitly call all that stuff out. But you as the writer, you should be able to answer those questions if someone asks, or if it chooses to come up in your story again. What do they do? What happens this? And all this stuff. Because it makes your world realistic, and realism helps push your story farther because people can relate to it. And if your audience can relate to your story, they don't get as confused and they don't fall out of the story and they want to continue reading. Though, with that being said, it is getting pretty late and I have to start calling an episode. But before I do, my friend, I have a writing prompt for you. Write a story about an individual who books a single night in a hostel. Though he arrives to the town super late, he gets there and he discovers the gate to his hostel is locked and he cannot get in. Now, I don't care the genre. It could be fantasy, it could be horror, it could be romance or anything like that. And I also don't care the format, whether it's poetry, flash fiction, song, or even a journal entry. All I really care about is you have fun with it and make the most out of it. And now really is time for me to call it a day. If you enjoyed the content of this week's episode, please like and subscribe. And if you want any more content from the Jinks'd world, visit my website at jinksdworld.com. That is JINKSDWORLD.com. Till next time, enjoy your writing.